Hi, everyone. Great morning. Welcome back to Chai Together. I am your host and founder, Pratibha Day. You are tuning in for your cup of courage, hope, and imagination today. And I am here with Mrs. Marisa Ferrera. How are you feeling?
Hello.
Yeah. Well,
Sorry, I missed that. You froze for a
Oh, how are
minute.
you doing?
Oh, I'm great. I'm fantastic. I choose to have a great day every day.
I like that. So when you wake up, do you say it's going to be a great day today?
I do, and I also wake up before I even get out of bed. I just lay in bed for a few minutes and just think of all the things I'm grateful for. I like to start my day with gratitude.
Wow. I like
Yeah.
that. So do you ever write down the list, or are you just mental?
It's mental now, but for a number of years, I did write down actually at the end of the day, I would write down 5 things I was grateful for. But now I do it just in my mind, both in the morning and before I go to sleep. So I start and end my day that way.
I like that because I do both. I don't I haven't kept a consistent routine like every single day of writing, but of course the affirmations and all of that is mental for me. Like when
Mhm.
I woke up, like I folded my hands and I'm just like, thank you, God. Like, I'm blessed for another day. I think I think that's more than enough because like even with Mr. Bob Proctor, like when I studied in his program, Thinking into Results, he was sharing in the videos that he didn't have a vision board. It was all mental.
Mhm.
I feel like when you have something innate that's inside of you that you don't need a vision board because it's your passion, it's
Mhm.
something
Mhm.
that you just live the lifestyle where you don't need to be reminded. It's just who you are. What are
Mhm.
your thoughts
Mhm.
on that?
Well, I have had vision boards in the past as well. So I think we kind of go through
Mhm.
phases of what we find works best for us. Like when I
Yeah.
wanted to attract my ideal relationship after I had been
Mm,
married and divorced and then, didn't have I had an emotionally abusive relationship for a couple of years, which we can talk about if you want. But
yeah.
at that point, when I really wanted to create my soulmate relationship, I did create a vision board, and I just, on a Bristol board with all pictures of couples doing things that I wanted to do and the words that I wanted to really embody, joy and love and connection and all those things. And I had it in my bedroom on my wall. So again, every
Wow.
time I woke up, I would see it, and it would just fill me with such joy to attract this person into my life. And I went to bed with it, and I did attract him. So it but I also made my list in terms of what I wanted. So I did both.
I like that because I feel like vision boards can be great for it to get into your subconscious,
Mm-hmm.
if you already don't have it, in your subconscious.
Mm-hmm.
And, I like that when I asked you if you're married, so I could properly write your name, that you said you're blissfully married. That's
Yes.
amazing to me. Your response is like, yeah, like, it's just something sweet, like candy, like, yeah, I'm blissfully married.
Yes.
And I don't usually hear that from people. So
Yes.
when you were doing your vision board, like was bliss one of the words that you wrote down?
I don't actually remember because that was actually over 20 years ago. I've been together
Wow.
with my partner for about 20 years. So,
Wow.
yeah, and it's just the best relationship I've ever had. And he says the same. And I'm his third wife. He's my second husband. So we had some practice along the way, but neither one of us lasted 20 years with anyone. I mean, I was in a 10-year marriage. And I would say the first 5 years were blissful, but the next
Mm,
5, it started to, slowly
wow.
deteriorate, even though we tried to work things out. But I
Mm.
would say really only 5 of those years were blissful. So that's why I say it now, because it's such a joy to be able to feel this. Well, I was going to say the same depth of love, but it's actually deeper than it was 20 years ago. And it's really is possible for people. I really believe that.
I really like that. And I'm going to tell the viewers a bit about you before we
Sure.
go on. So, Mrs. Marisa Ferrera is the #1 best-selling author of Magnify Your Magnificence, Your Pathway to the life and relationships you truly desire. Her passion and mission is to empower conscious individuals who struggle with conflict and drama in family relationships to create healthy, loving boundaries so they can stand in their power and authentically express themselves. She shows them how to transform conflict into opportunities to heal and create deeper and more meaningful relationships. Marissa has been featured on podcasts, blogs, and online magazines. You can get her complimentary Create Healthy Boundaries guide and other free resources at magnifyyourmagnificence.com/free. you know, I have a question for this. How it states to empower conscious individuals. So I know not everyone, lives consciously, right, on a day-to-day basis, or
Yes.
most people are mundane and in their routines and just on the go. So is it that your program brings people to focus more on the consciousness, or do they already have to be conscious?
It can be both. And I question whether or not even in my bio to include the word conscious. And I kind of play
Mm.
with it and take it in and put it back. But the reason I put it in is because I do talk a lot and come from a place of deep spiritual connection. And so if
Mm.
somebody's not open to that, then I wouldn't be a good fit for them. And so I wasn't
Right.
sure what other word to put in there so that they don't have to actually be totally conscious of their consciousness, but someone that at least has an open mind to explore the connection between mind, body, and soul, because soul is a really big part of what I help people do, connect with their authentic self. And if you're not open to that, or you believe it's all woo-woo, then I wouldn't be the best person for someone to work
No.
with. So that kind of helps people. If they look at that and go, oh, she's weird, then that's good. It's better they don't contact me, right?
Yeah, it's your niche, and that's
Yeah,
not your clientele. And
exactly.
I really like that because, whenever you go to invest in it, more so engage yourself in a program rather than invest, right? Because invest, like most people would think of just money wise, but
Mm-hmm.
like really engage, in a program to better yourself. You have to really believe and be open minded when you go into
Mm-hmm.
a new change. But if you're hesitant and resistant, your body's like gonna freeze, the
Mm-hmm.
nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
I find that to be very interesting that, change doesn't come because someone else wants you to change. It comes because you want that for yourself.
Oh boy, that is so true. And you know what it made me think about? Actually,
Yeah.
my first marriage, because
Wow.
what was causing the challenges, because I was so in love when I got married. I mean, like most
Yeah.
people, right? You think
Aw,
it's going to be forever.
right.
I felt like the luckiest woman in the world. I remember when during that time, maybe it was in our fourth year of marriage, the
Mm.
movie, oh shoot, what's it called now? The one where the person died, the husband died anyways. And it was, I remember just totally breaking down afterwards, just at the mere thought of losing my husband. I thought would be just so horrible. And
Mm.
then fast forward a few years later, we're getting a divorce. And I remember thinking, how the hell did that happen? How did we go from this state of just feeling so connected and so in love to not being able to be together? And what was happening was that I was continuing to grow and evolve, because that's been my life path since childhood. Like, I
Wow.
feel like I've lived a few lifetimes in this one. I don't recognize myself at, different decades. I was like
Mm.
a different, it's not like I was a different, well, I acted like a different person because I was becoming more and more of who I actually am. I was discovering more and more of my own truth of who I am each, as I was going along. And so in the
Mhm.
marriage, I was continuing to work on myself as I always did. And so I was still growing and evolving on many levels, and my husband wasn't. And so we
Mm.
started to grow apart, and I really wanted him to walk the path with me. And we got, marriage counseling, and he tried to change. This is where this comes up when you talked about the change. He was trying to change for me. And so he's trying to change his behavior because he didn't want the marriage to end. He was really not happy about that as I was starting to talk about it. And so I was willing to make it work. I wanted it to work. I was doing everything I possibly could. And then I realized that he was making changes for me, but it couldn't stick because it's not where he was in his own journey. He wasn't ready for those changes. And so was really difficult to end the marriage, because he was a wonderful man. He still is, I'm sure. We're not connected now, but
Mhm.
it wasn't like I could say to my parents and my friends and family, well, he cheated on me, or he's an alcoholic, or he's abusive. I had no reason that is socially acceptable,
Mm.
right? That people would say, oh yeah, it's a good thing you left. I knew that on the outside, people thought he was great. So how am I going to stand up and say I'm walking away from a marriage of almost 10 years? We've been together for 12, right? Through our dating as well. And yet I knew in my heart and soul that we had lived our relationship. It was over. It was not it wasn't to be anymore. And so I ended it with that. And he became more of who he was after I was gone, which was just amazing. All the things I was trying to encourage him to do while we were married, he didn't do while we were together, but he started pursuing his own passions once we weren't together anymore. So I actually freed him, even though he didn't want it to end. So it's
Wow.
interesting. You just don't know, where things are going to go. But following your heart and your soul, I think, even when it's hard, is the most important thing to do. It will always lead you to your greatest joy.
I like everything you said. And you know how you said that he was trying to change, and it's I had a thought and I just
Mhm.
lost it.
Well, it'll come back.
Oh, when
Maybe.
people say that you've changed, right? And
Mm.
you were saying you were just growing to become, who you are. But
Mhm.
people say you change. It's no, you're just evolving into who you're supposed to
Exactly.
be, who you've always been, but maybe suppressed or held back, right? But now you're able to free yourself. But I find it to be so magnificent that, you did that for yourself because, most people would need that push or that something to click, right? Emotional impact or something to happen. Like, what was it that like pivoted you to like be like, no, this isn't working for me, and I'm going to take this hard decision? Because it's
Mhm.
hard. Like, I'm not married, but
Mhm.
I'm sure it's like it's a very like important part of your life. It's like your
Mhm.
lifestyle, and to walk away from that, it's not for everyone, because that's why most women or men stay in marriages for financial reasons
Yes.
or for the comfort. But there are also people who don't grow themselves. Maybe they don't read, they don't do any self-development
Mhm.
programs.
Mhm.
They just want to do their job and then die one day.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, I'm not sure that that's what they actually want. I think it's what
Mm.
people settle for because of
Yes,
the fear
settle for it.
that is stronger than the desire.
Yes.
Right. And so, what you were saying about what allowed me to do it, I think it's because, as I mentioned, it wasn't, I mean, I got married in my late 20s, but I was engaged in my early 20s to somebody else. And
Mm.
so, like I said, I've evolved and grown through different decades, and I've always been listening to my inner guidance. I was really in love with my fiance back in my early 20s, but I felt this inner guidance that this relationship was not for me, and I didn't understand it because I thought, but I love this person, and we were engaged, we had the hall booked, I had a deposit on my wedding dress, I picked the bridesmaid. I mean, it was all ready to go 8 months down the road, right?
Wow.
And yet here I am feeling this ongoing, every time I was in prayer meditation, I would feel this pull that this relationship was not the right one for me. And so, without even really understanding why, I chose to end it. And again,
Wow.
that was not easy, especially, again, I grew up in, family, Italian family, first generation Canadian. So I'm thinking, how am I going to tell my parents that put a deposit on the hall and everything's all set up? Like, are they going to feel upset because what are people going to think? That's, what comes up
Wow.
all the time, right? But I just knew in my heart that I didn't, what would happen was every time I would visualize my wedding day, I would imagine myself walking down the aisle, and I felt like my fiance at the time wasn't ready for marriage. He really didn't have that look on his face that I had
Mm.
imagined I wanted my wedding day to be like. And so it tormented me until I made that choice. And he did say to me at the time when I broke up with him that he wished he could put me away for a few years and come back and get me. So he couldn't acknowledge that he wasn't ready. He probably would have gone through with it if I didn't end it. But then I would have been like many others that knew on their wedding day that it wasn't right, but went through with it, right? And then we would have lasted maybe a few years, and it wouldn't have worked. And so again, so when it came to my marriage of 10 years, because I've had a history of making very difficult choices by following that guidance and always being led to a better place, that gave me the strength and the courage to move forward with this, because I knew I didn't want to wake up 10 years later. You know how you hear a lot of people after 25, 30 years of marriage, and then they get divorced and they say, oh, I knew 10 years ago it was over. I
Mm.
just couldn't end it. That would be in my mind. So see, this is how my spirit, my guides were always putting that in my head. Do you want to be one of those women? Is that what you want to do? Wake up 10 years from now and have, lost 10 years of your life. So yes, it was extremely difficult, especially because my husband is begging me in tears not to throw away 12 years. I mean, I felt horrible because I thought, what if somebody was doing that to me, saying, no, it's over and there is no possibility? Like I tried, exhausted every possibility I could think of. And I kept thinking, well, what if somebody was doing that to me? I knew it would be horrible. So it was hard, but it was another really amazing decision for both of us, because he moved on and got remarried and had, a child. And, so I'm very happy for him. And I always leave relationships blessing the person that I let go of, leaving them with love.
Wow. It really seems like it. Seems like you're the leader in your relationships, like a champion, like so brave. And then, when you leave them, it's like you've transformed their life as you free yourself.
Without realizing it, because you don't know what's going to happen. That's the thing. You're afraid of the worst. We always think of the worst case scenario, right? What's going to happen? Because I left my job at the same time. I was a school teacher, and I felt, again, guided to resign from a very secure teaching position, top of the pay scale, top whatever. And so I'm leaving my marriage and my job the same year, and I had no clue what was the next step. It really was one of those, jump and the net will appear situations. I've done that many times in my life, and I'm telling you, the net does appear, even though I can't see it before I jump. I would love to see it before I jump, but now that I've been through it several times, I can trust that, yeah, it'll be there. I'm not gonna fall and crash.
Wow. I just see like you're just so dominant. Like, like how do you feel about yourself? Do you feel like what word would you use to describe yourself?
Oh, that's a good question. I've never been asked that question. How would I describe myself? Myself. Wow. Oh, I don't know.
That's another question I have for you that you can work on.
That's a good one. How would I describe? I mean, there's different words I would describe myself. I mean, I'm just very committed to truth, to finding my own inner truth and helping other people. But that's not a word to describe me. Maybe committed or determined, compassionate. I don't know.
I like that.
But what's really interesting is that I talked about how I've evolved throughout my life. Even my sisters, my younger sister in particular, said to me many years ago, she said, I mean, I don't even recognize you anymore. Like in a good way, she said that, right? Because I was the child that never spoke, because I grew up in, it was a traumatic childhood. I had emotional and physical abuse myself, my sisters, my mom. So it was a very scary, terrifying day-to-day existence. And so I learned that it was safest just to keep quiet, just don't speak, right? Because you may say something that sets off, my father, and it could end up being very unpleasant. And so I had no voice, I had no confidence, I had no self-esteem, I had no friends because I was terrified of just people. And so, you go from that, and now it's like, I speak up, I speak my truth, but I do it with love and compassion. I have boundaries that I didn't have before, and that's why I focus so much on family relationships and boundaries, because of my own experience of what it's like not to have them, and the power that you have when you do have them, and when you can speak your truth from love, not from anger and hostility and, that pushing, but just from gentleness and compassion. It makes a huge difference.
Yeah. You're just so beautiful. Like you were submissive, and now you're just like a beautiful swan.
Oh, thank you. That's so sweet.
I feel, I want to share two things. The movie Someone Great, I don't know if you know of it, on Netflix. Basically, it's a 9-year relationship, and the man is breaking up with the woman because she's moving away to another state for a job, and a 9-year relationship he's ending, but it was because of his insecurities and her ambition. So she wanted to stay with him because she loves him, but he doesn't even love himself.
Exactly.
So they had to make that hard decision to walk away, even though it's 9 years. And my own relationship with my ex was about 8-9 months. But when I moved to Thailand in 2018, I knew that I would break up with this person because they couldn't guarantee me a future. So I'm not going to keep extending a relationship, especially long distance. And when I did, and we were friends prior, so when I did break up, like he didn't want to break up, but after we broke up and had a conversation, he was a better friend and a better
Yes.
person. Than I feel like a relationship tied the person down. I was like, why couldn't you be like this in the relationship?
I know.
So that's
We
what it
want that.
reminds me of. Like
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
before we were together, like be more free spirited and like be yourself. Like I felt like the person felt restricted because of the relationship title.
Sometimes
Perhaps.
that happens for
Yeah.
some people, but you can have it because the relationship I have now, like I said, with my husband now, we're on the same path, and we're both on the path of continuing to grow and evolve and to support each other in that process. We don't keep each other back. We encourage one another to continue to grow and evolve. And so, I mean, this is definitely a lifetime relationship. But I thought, I mean, I like, again, many other people thought, when you get married and you say your vows and, till death do us part and all of that. And that was my biggest challenge actually in my previous marriage. And it still bothered me for quite a while after my divorce, because I kept thinking, but I really believe in my word. My word is so important to me, integrity. And I didn't live my word till death do us part. I said those vows. And when I was sharing this with my mother once, because I still knew I made the right choice, but this was still hanging over me. I wasn't at peace with it. And as I was sharing this with my mother, several months after the divorce, I had this inspired thought just pop in my head, and it stopped me in my tracks because it was something I had never even considered. And that's why I knew it came from a guide. And what I heard was, who said it meant a physical death? And I was like, what? Like, I thought I did live up to my vows because it died on a spiritual level, and that's what's most important is our spirit. And I felt that. I used to even say to friends, I just feel like when I'm together, I feel like my spirit is dead. And when I'm not around him, it becomes alive again. And every time I'd go home, I'd feel my spirit dead. And so that freed me tremendously. I was so grateful for receiving that message. So grateful.
That is so deep. I've never heard anyone say that. And I've talked to many people.
I never heard it before either. I mean, like I said, it was just my sincere desire to be at peace with this peace that just was hanging over me. And I received that. And I hope it frees somebody else that might be listening that maybe feels the same way. I don't know, but it was very powerful.
Yes. So have you always been meditating? Like you're so in tune with yourself. A lot of people are not.
Yeah, no, I was definitely not. I mean, I grew up in a Roman Catholic home. So I mean, they don't talk about meditating. There's prayer. And I always felt a connection with God because God was my safety. Like even as a child, when I was afraid, I would be praying to be kept safe and praying that my dad would stop, hurting us and all that kind of stuff. And so I always felt a close connection to God because like I said, I had trouble making friends. So God was the only person I could communicate with, or Jesus or whatever. But then as I got older and I continued going to church, even when I was married, and that was another problem when I started questioning my faith, that created a problem in my marriage as well. But I started questioning, okay, why am I Roman Catholic? Why do I believe in all of this? And I realized I grew up in a Catholic home. And I thought, well, if I was born in a Jewish home, I'd be Jewish. If I was born in a Muslim home, I'd be Muslim. So what do I believe? Like, what's true for me? Not what have I been taught and told, but what is really true for me? And so that's when I started exploring what I call spirituality instead of religion. And that opened up a lot for me. But again, drove the marriage this way because that was not the road my husband was on at the time. But that's where I started. And meditating wasn't always easy for me because I was like many people. I tried on so many different kinds and I'm thinking, okay, this isn't working. I'm sitting here, for 5 minutes or 15 minutes, closing my eyes. It's like nothing's happening. I do group meditations and people would start talking about all these visions they had. And I saw this dove or then I'm like, I see black, like I don't see anything, what, and then I was always going into, well, what's wrong with me? That's my go-to thing. Like when I think, it's working for everybody else. So what's wrong with me? But I stuck with it because I thought there's got to be something to it. Everybody keeps talking about this meditation stuff. And so I do, in addition to the waking up with gratitude. After that, part of my morning spiritual practice is to meditate. And I've just about almost a year ago started working with A Course in Miracles, which I'm finding very fascinating and again, helping me evolve even more. But just taking the time to just be still for 15 minutes. And I've been able to connect with guides and I receive messages. And it's, I still don't see a lot of things like some people do, but what I receive is through words, which is great. Because one person, I was in a meditation challenge recently, and again, people are talking about seeing their grandmother that passed away or all these different things. And I'm like, I really have that desire. I'd love to see this stuff. And somebody commented and said, yeah, but you actually get the words. You don't have to try to figure out what all the symbols mean. And I'm like, I never thought about it that way before. You know how we always want what we don't have sometimes, right? It's like we see what other people have and like, I want that. And so it helped me to appreciate more. Not that I didn't appreciate it, but I appreciate it on a deeper level now. And I'm letting go of this need to, like, I have to see visuals or something in order to make it real.
Wow. I just have to say again, you're just a beautiful person.
Thank you. Thank you.
So it's like you've always been a teacher, you went from academically teaching now to teaching on a spiritual level without restrictions. Like, this is your business, what you love to do. So when did that transition happen? And I want to know, what grade did you teach?
Well, I started out as a preschool teacher because
Me too.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Because like I mentioned earlier, I had no self-confidence or self-esteem. And another thing, I felt like I was stupid. I didn't think I was smart enough to go to university. And so I pegged myself at a very young age. But I wanted to work with children because I always loved being around children. And so I ended up going to college, which was, it was considered, well, not as difficult as university. So I went to college and got my early childhood education degree. But because I love to learn, even when I started teaching in a preschool, I started taking a university course just out of interest with no intention at the time of getting a degree. I just wanted to keep learning, and so I did. And so I took a couple of courses at the university that was in the city where I was working. And then I heard about a correspondence program from another university that would give you credits from your college diploma towards your degree. And I thought, well, maybe why not, right? So I ended up getting like 8 credits towards my degree out of 15 that you need. So I ended up getting my teaching degree, and then I started teaching in the public system, kindergarten to grade 6, and ended up getting a master's degree through the process as well. So it's kind of funny how you go from feeling like you're too stupid to go to school. And again, that was just a limiting belief that I had, that I was ingrained in me because of, my experiences. And when you start opening up to possibilities, then who knows, anything's possible, right? So yeah. But then when I left my teaching job, as I mentioned, I kind of didn't do a whole lot for a few years. I wasn't sure really what was next in store for me, but I did end up starting my own holistic private school because I wanted a school that I could give what I wanted the children to receive, because in the system, the reason I left really, I loved teaching. It was my passion, and I really thought I would be there till I retired. I used to brag about it at parties, and I would say, I can't believe I get paid for this. I mean, this is like amazing, right? And so, but then again, 10 years later, I'm like, I'm not there. And I realized it was because the system, again, was not aligned with my soul. It was always coming back to spirit, right? It was like what I had to do in that classroom and the way I had to grade the kids, it was just so out of alignment what I believed those children needed and deserved, and I just couldn't do it anymore. And I remembered, years earlier when people would say, oh, the best teachers always leave. And I used to say, I'm going to be one of the best and I'm never leaving. Well, I left. I ended up leaving. But I did start my own school. It was for what I called out-of-the-box learners, get rid of the labels, focus on the social-emotional development. That was my key, because I thought, there's so much emphasis on academics at the expense of everything else. And we're not just our brains, right? And what was fascinating is that even though it's not like we had no academics. Of course, we're going to teach academics in a school, but the emphasis was on the social emotional development, communication skills, having kids connect to their authentic selves, believing in themselves, all that kind of stuff. And their academics soared. I had one student that was able to do 2 years in one, and he was behind when he came to me.
Wow.
Because you get rid of all those emotional blocks that are
Yes.
really in the way of learning, in the way of really magnifying your magnificence, right?
Mhm.
I mean, you can't magnify your magnificence if you don't even know you are magnificent. It's
I love
impossible,
that word.
right?
I love that word. And someone just said, we have to be in alignment, and they have enjoyed hearing from you today.
Oh, thank
And you
you.
have a beautiful testimony and beautiful soul. These are different comments.
Thank
And,
you.
I was just listening to a podcast by Heinz, and he's very spiritual. He's on YouTube, and
You have to look it up.
HINDZ. Yeah. He's very mellow, and he gives, spiritual messages. He was just saying that, when people talk about deadlines, he's like, he wants something full of life. He doesn't even like the term deadline. It puts pressure on you. And he said, instead of saying, I have a deadline, I have to, finish this by this date, you can say, by, March 15th, 2023, I'm going to have a fruitful, school where I teach children and they're going to be nourished. And he said, do you see the difference between saying, I have a deadline, I have to open a school by this time? It's like,
yes.
The word dead, he's like, I don't want anything dead.
I'm with you. I love that. And you know what it reminded me of? You know how, and this might be, it's using the word dead, but you know how people, when they have an experience or they eat something or whatever, and they say, oh, this is to die for. And I'm like, why don't we just say this is to live for?
Yeah.
You actually can't have it if you're dead.
Wow.
Like, it's like, so so every time I hear that word, I'm like, no, this is to live for. It's to live for, not to die for. So it's along the same lines, right? Words are very powerful.
Yeah.
Really powerful. And I'm becoming or trying to become more and more conscious of the words that I use so I can change them into more powerful ones.
Yeah, because, earlier when you had corrected me when I was saying, that's what they want to do, and then they want to die. And then you reminded me, that that's not really what people want. They're just fearful.
Yeah.
And I wanted to share with you that I do know people personally who are in marriages and relationships that aren't balanced, or one partner is outgrowing the other, but they still stay with them because of tradition and culture. And even to be transparent, my own parents have, because of being South Asian, but miserable,
I know. It's tough. It's tough. It's part of our conditioning, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, cultural conditioning, societal conditioning. We're taught that you need to stick it out. Like you don't care, or you're not committed if you don't stay.
Yeah.
And some relationships are salvageable. Like even if they're really struggling, it doesn't mean because you're in a struggling relationship that it has to be over. It really depends. Like, and that's what I tell people that I work with. It's like, don't think because you're having a lot of problems that it's finished, you're done. Because as you work through some of your own issues and things that are contributing to that relationship not working, it's possible that it can turn around. But the key is to be more committed to yourself than to the relationship. And now somebody might not like to hear that because they'll think, oh, no, you can't do that. That's being selfish. But the truth is, it's not. Because like I described in my previous marriage, because I was committed to myself and listening to my soul, my guidance, I freed my partner. I didn't know that was going to be the outcome. He didn't either. He was desperately trying to cling on to me. And I learned later that he was living in my shadow. And I would have never, I didn't see that when we were together because, again, I didn't see myself as better than him or stronger than him or any of that. I didn't have that perception of myself. But in that relationship, I had already become a stronger woman than I was in the past. So I can see now, looking back, that he maybe perceived himself as weaker and he hid in my shadow. So when I was no longer there, he had to spread his own wings. He couldn't fly on my back.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think it's not easy. It's not easy, but I'm telling you, you cannot go wrong if you follow your spirit. You cannot go wrong because whatever your spirit is guiding you to do is for everyone's best interest, even if it doesn't look like it on the surface.
Wow. Wow. And this depth of information, it's not for everyone to understand.
No.
It's really not. It's really only if you've gone through, things and are open-minded to understanding.
Mhm.
So I want to ask you, do you want to now share, some of the work you do in your book and all of
Oh,
that?
sure.
Yeah.
Well, the book, it's interesting. This book, I'll hold it up because is it
Yeah.
backwards? Is it backwards? The
No, it's
right?
good.
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is the book. And what's interesting about the book is, remember,
Mhm.
I told you there was a time when after I left teaching, and even after I left ended my school because I couldn't sustain the school financially. I actually went personally bankrupt. It was a labor of love for 6 years. I didn't
Wow.
pay myself. I made sure everybody else got paid even before I went bankrupt.
Wow.
That was something I just was not willing for anyone to lose money but me. But that was a whole other story we can talk about because that was another dark night of the soul experience for me. But after that, I was like, okay, what do I do now? I'm like, here I am, ready, willing, and able. I want to be of service. I want to share my gifts, the wisdom I've gained over my own, journey with others, but I don't know how. And I'm really tired of trying to figure this out. I got really, really frustrated. So I threw my hands in the air one day and I said, that's it. I'm done. Universe, God, whoever you are, I'm here. And I'm not going to try anymore. I'm just tired of trying. So you're just going to have to show me what's next. Otherwise, I'm just going to do whatever. And about 3 nights later, I was awakened in the middle of the night. And when I looked at the clock, it was 3:33 a.m.
Mm.
And I was wide awake. And now normally if I wake up at that hour, it's to go to the bathroom and go back to sleep, right? And so I thought, well, this is weird. And then I thought, this was in 2013, so it was a few years back. And I thought, well, a lot of people talk about this number. It's got some spiritual number, but I wasn't into any of that stuff at the time, so I didn't really understand it. But I thought, well, maybe there's a reason I'm wide awake right now. And so I remember literally saying in my head, okay, I'll play, right? And so I got up and I went in the living room, opened up my laptop, and I just started journaling. And I was typing with my eyes closed because I was still kind of in a meditative state. I didn't want to totally become alert and get my mind activated. And so I just started typing with my eyes closed, like a journal, like, oh, I just woke up, it's 3:33, I don't know, just whatever I was feeling. And then I realized at one point that I wasn't typing the words, I was receiving dictation, if that makes any sense. There were words that were coming through me, and I remembered it was like in the middle of a sentence, and I was startled because when I realized it, and I went, oh. And then I'm like, what's going on? I don't know. Is this me? Is this, where is this coming from? Right. And then I thought, okay, well, I don't know what's really happening, but I didn't want to open my eyes and read whatever I had typed because I thought because I know myself, my mind would have started trying to write the rest of it. So I thought, okay, well, if this is some guidance or whatever, I'm willing to continue receiving this. So I took a deep breath and I thought, okay, I'm ready. And like I said, it was the middle of a sentence, so I had no idea what was coming next. Well, then words continued. So I just kept typing until it was finished. So at the end, I went back to see if I could find a disjointed sentence somewhere, and I couldn't. There was no sentence. So I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. Now, I'd never had this experience before. Okay, so this was completely new to me. So when my husband woke up, I told him what happened. And I said, can I read what I wrote or what came through? Or can I read what happened? And he said, sure. So I didn't look up the whole time because I was a little self-conscious and nervous and all of that, right? So I just kind of reading from my typed notes. And when I looked up, my husband had tears coming down his face. And he said, I think that message was for me. And I went, wow, that's pretty cool, right? So I thought that was really kind of neat. Well, what happened was I started waking up regularly in the middle of the night between 3:30, 5:30 every morning. And I kept receiving these different messages. And then at one point there was one that's saying, well, you wouldn't be reading this book if, and I'm like, book? This is a book? Like, I'm like I had no idea what was going on. So it ended up, this book is not, I didn't write it. I only wrote the introduction or, about how this all came to be, but the rest was completely channeled. So it's powerful, powerful messages. And they're all about how we can connect with who we are, the truth about who we are, so we can create the life and the relationships we want. And And the beauty of it is it's not just information. Every message is followed by an exercise on how to apply the message and how to integrate it. So you can do journaling as you go along. It's very, very powerful. And just another thing I want to share before we go on, when it came to the title of the book, I said to my guides, look, this is not my area of expertise. I am not good with titles, headlines, all that kind of stuff. I just cannot. And so I'm not going to try to figure it out. So you need to give me a title. And I put a notepad by my bed because I thought I don't want to have to get up in the middle of the night. Sure enough, one morning in the middle of the night, I wake up with Magnify Your Magnificence. And I'm like, oh, I like that.
Wow.
And then I thought, yeah, but I wonder if the .com is available, because I had tried, you have no idea how many .com URLs I looked up before this all happened, trying to find something for my next level of work.
Wow.
And they were all taken. Like, it's like real estate in the sky, all gone, like even abc123.com. I mean, it was ridiculous. So I said, well, I'll be curious to see if the .com's available. And it was. And I didn't go buy it in the middle of the night. I waited till the morning when I woke up. So I was like, wow, this is definitely divine intervention, because I couldn't have come up with that title if I tried. Not in a million years. So that's my book. That was a long story about the book. And so the work that I do, as you mentioned at the beginning, is really, I work with people with their relationships, and I chose to focus on family relationships, which includes a spouse or a partner. Because that seems to be the one that people have the most difficulty with. Sometimes people can create healthier boundaries and stand in their power at work or with friends. But when it comes to family, all you have to do is go home for a family gathering at Christmas, if you celebrate Christmas or some other holiday or special occasion, and all the tension and stuff that starts happening, that tells you there's a lot of unresolved issues and wounds that are playing out for everybody. So I help people deal with theirs, because like you were saying, we can't change anyone but ourselves. We can only work on ourselves. But when we change ourselves through our own inner healing work, many times the people around us start to shift. And I had that experience with my father. So I'm happy to say that even though it was a very difficult childhood and I avoided him for years in my adult life, again, only went home for those special occasions because I didn't like the energy around him. That completely shifted after I did my own inner healing work. And we ended up having a very beautiful relationship up until his death, 2015. So it's possible. It's possible to completely shift a relationship. But it really depends. It's not a guarantee, but what I do guarantee with people that work for me is if they do the work, and if they do, if it's best for them to walk away from a relationship, whether it's a partner or sometimes it's even a family member, to have a separation or a divorce from a family member is sometimes the most loving thing you can do for everyone. Then I can guarantee you can walk away with peace in your heart. Not walking away with slamming the door, I never want to see you again, get out of my life. Because that energy, if you leave a relationship with that energy, you carry it with you for the rest of your life until you don't.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah. And I have never had heard a story about divine intervention like that, how someone wrote their book that way. I had yet to hear a story like yours.
Well, yeah. I'm grateful, because I'm not. Ask my husband. I don't do well with a blank page. Like, if you ask me to write about something, I just stare at the page. I'm a great editor, maybe because of my teaching. Give me something, and I can really, work with it. But to write something myself, even now, like I have my email list, and I'm not consistent because I have to sit with a blank page and write something. Right? I'm going to start doing more videos, I think, because I prefer to just share in this way. So I don't know. I'm just grateful it came through that way, because if someone said, write a book about your experience, I'd be like, yeah, I don't think so. Who knows? Maybe one day. I'm open to that possibility, because never say never, right?
Yeah.
Well, maybe I'll write a book.
Yeah. Maybe another one.
Maybe
and I
another
like,
one. Yeah.
What you said, that you were able to have a beautiful relationship with your dad later on, because a lot of the times when people cheat or, are abusive, to their children and things, people just separate and then don't connect again, or, until the parent even dies. But for you, did you not want to leave off with that energy? Did you want to mend it?
Well, it wasn't that I set out to mend it, I don't think. It was just kind of happened as part of my own inner healing work. I was able, the big piece is forgiveness. And that's a tough one for a lot of people because they think, when we forgive somebody that treated us abusively, badly, that we're condoning their behavior, and we're not. It's not. Forgiveness is really about having a deeper understanding and compassion for the other person. And so when I was able to look at my father, not as the monster that I thought he was growing up, like literally, he was like over 6 feet tall, a construction worker, big man, right? Very scary. So I didn't see him from that perspective. When I was able to look at him as a wounded, innocent child who was also abused, right? And didn't have the tools or the ability to heal from his past the way I did, then my heart opened up because I could see his innocence. I could see that, yes, his actions and the way he raised us, didn't feel good in many ways, right? But, physically hurt, mentally, emotionally. But in his heart, he was doing what he thought he had to do to make sure that his 3 daughters, walked the path of, not getting into trouble and getting into drugs and alcohol or get teenage pregnancy and all. He didn't know how else to raise us. So it's not to justify, right? It's not to justify and say, well, it was okay, what he did in order to keep us on that straight and narrow path. No, but if you can just change the story around it, instead of focusing on, yes, but he did this and he did this and he did that, and I ended up with no self-esteem and I couldn't speak and I had no friends and I was miserable and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's a story and there's truth to it. It's not that it was a lie, that was my experience. But if I chose to live that story, I would not be where I am right now, in a relationship with an incredible man, living my dream life in Colombia, South America, right? With the 180-degree view, I'm looking out of the Andes Mountains in front of me in the country, right? I don't know where I would be, but I would not be here. I would not be as happy as I am. And so when you look at, when you're willing, even if it's hard, willing to just look at a situation from a different lens, from a different perspective, and you're willing to forgive, and if you don't know how, get some support around it, you free yourself in ways that is unimaginable. And it doesn't mean you're going to necessarily create a deep relationship with that person like I did with my father. That's not always possible. It depends, right, on the other person, because if somebody's going to continue to be abusive or narcissistic or whatever, then it's not in your best interest to stay and subject yourself to that, right? But when I created boundaries with my father and changed who I was being with him, I didn't have that experience anymore. So I could develop that closeness. And I felt honored to be one of his primary caregivers the last 2 months of his life. I didn't do it out of obligation, which I would have done if I hadn't done this work. Trust me, I would have still gone home because I was living in Colombia. I still would have gone back to Canada and taken care of him with resentment, because I'd be like, yeah, I could be in Colombia and I'm here looking after you after everything you did to me, blah, 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 right? But it wasn't like that. It was like a gift. It was a gift.
Wow.
To be able to do that.
This is a big deal.
It is a big deal. It is a big deal. And it's not easy, but it's so worth it, because it's not easy to stay in woundedness either, That's not easy either. And it just creeps up into all parts of your life, right? It sabotages your life in so many ways. It stops you in so many ways from living fully. So it's just, I can't emphasize enough the importance of it.
I really like that. And people can find your book at your website, right?
Yeah, they can actually request a free chapter. Say, they'll get the intro and a message and the prologue.
Wow. Is it also on Amazon?
Yes, it's on Amazon as well, if
That's
they want
great.
to buy it. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So,
and also, if people do want to just chat with me, if there's anybody listening that resonates with what I've been sharing and wants to explore the possibility of maybe working together, they can also just go to Marisa or talkwithmarisa.com and just schedule a complimentary call where we can have a chat as well. And that link's also on my website if they didn't catch that. And we can talk.
Marisa.com.
Yes, one S in Marisa.
I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk with Marisa.com. Not
That's it.
Marissa, but
That's right.
Marisa.
Marisa, Italian. Yes, I do get Marissa a lot, but that's with two S's. Yeah.
Wow. Hi, Latoya. She said, what an amazing platform you have here with such an amazing guest. Yes.
Thank you, Latoya.
Kristen, so true. You get to choose your not easy options in life. Thank you,
Yeah.
ladies.
Yeah.
Aw. Thanks for listening. And Latoya and Kristen are both great to connect with. Latoya has her own podcast.
Excellent.
I think it's Latoya. I'm sorry, can you remind me? But it's about based on love. Speaking
Yes.
of love or something like that. I'm sorry. That was on it too. I'm going blank.
Love is always the answer. Love is always the answer.
Yeah, unconditional love. Recently, I don't know, something I'm reading a book. I'm finishing. It's called Love and Respect, the love she desires, the respect he needs. That's the title of the book. Have you ever heard of it?
I have not heard of that book.
Yeah. I'm listening to it on Audible, and it's, faith-based and marriage, but I'm spiritual. I'm not, a specific religion, but
right.
You can still learn lessons from
Absolutely
the book about relationship.
Sure.
Speaking of love, that's the name of Latoya's podcast.
Oh, I love that. Speaking of love, I got to write. I've been making notes as you've been talking.
Oh, thanks.
The different things you've been saying. Speaking of love, I'll have to look that one up too.
And I know you mentioned boundaries, and Sarah Gilman, I believe is the name, or Sarai Gilman, and she has a TED Talk on boundaries. So if you type in boundaries TED Talk, I don't know if you've heard it before, but that really helped me when I was in psychotherapy last year. And I used to have no boundaries, like whatsoever. Like that's why I was in so much trouble, because I didn't have any boundaries.
Yes.
And then when I started to set boundaries, my whole life changed. Like I have such a better life because I'm able to voice myself, like, no, like this is not okay with me, or I don't want to do this.
Yes.
Or that's rude of you, telling people how it is. I'm very vocal now compared to, I also didn't have a voice 12 years. I'm only 28 years young.
Wow.
And I was always told to, be quiet, and like I didn't have a say in my family's decisions because nobody listens to a child, even though I'm right. I ended up being right about things, but they don't want to listen to the youngest child. I find it to be interesting because children also have a voice. That's why, because I've been through, the same things as abuse, and I always found solace in children, and children don't judge you. They're just pure love. That's why when I was teaching in Thailand, even though it drained me, taking care of 29 pre-K children. So I was teaching them English. And when I came to this country, I didn't know English myself. So now I'm an ESL teacher.
That's wonderful.
Right?
Wow.
And when I was doing that, it just made me realize, like, I was finding comfort because I hadn't grieved, about my trauma in these kids, and that kept me going. So I feel like children are always a blessing because they don't hurt you, and that was my safe spot because kids didn't hurt me. I don't know if you found that kind of comfort in working with kids.
I did. And it's interesting because when you were saying that, what came to mind, which I had forgotten until you just shared this, was the reason I really wanted to work with kids, aside from the fact that I always loved being around them, even, with cousins and stuff, I was always, one leading them and doing stuff. Because in my heart, I had this desire. I said, if any children have a home like mine where they're not feeling safe, I want them, at least in the 8 hours they're with me, to feel totally loved and supported and safe. I want them to have that experience, because I didn't have that even at school, because I was my sisters and I were the only non-Anglo kids in the entire elementary school. So I was really teased a lot because I was ethnic. I wasn't one of them. So I didn't even have, even by the teachers, I was, there was racism with the teachers, or ethnicist, whatever you call it. What's the word? Bias with the teachers. And so I didn't feel safe anywhere, whether it was home or school. And so I wanted the children to have at least that time to just be able to come alive.
Yeah. And, when I would see some kids, I would wonder, like, are they being touched? Like, I would like observe their behavior.
Sure.
whoever's dropping them off, I would observe the person, and I can tell, instinct doesn't lie. So
Mm-hmm.
even when I was in Thailand, because I mean, hello, the hub of sex trafficking.
Yes, I
But,
know.
while I was there, I would just, especially the older people, and I would just look at, dropping off a little girl like, can I trust you?
Yeah.
Because, all that happened to me. So it's like, now I'm like, kind of like overprotective and looking out for these kids
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
they're not able to voice themselves. They don't know that it's abnormal at that age.
Exactly.
So they're not gonna be like, oh yeah, like, this is my grandfather, but he's doing this to me. So I'm just like, they're like 3, 4, and it's just like,
Exactly.
but now with the hormones or just in general, like the food and stuff, it's like they're like tall and big, and
Yeah.
you just, I don't know. It's just, I just don't feel like, you know, people in the world take children seriously or respect children. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we've both studied, in child education, and that,
Mm-hmm.
when you speak to them like an adult, like, how are you?
Mm-hmm.
How may I help you? And like with respect.
Yes.
When I hear people telling their kids, shut up, like,
Yeah.
you need to stop talking, that it's just, I feel everyone should have, course and program instruction on how to raise
Yes.
children in child development. I feel like everyone should study child development before they have a child. Like, do yourself
Hey,
a
oh,
favor.
absolutely. Absolutely. I used
People don't
to,
know.
yeah, I mean, another thing I had to deal with in my life was infertility. I wanted nothing more
Wow.
than to be a mother. And so that was a whole other story. But I remember when I was going through, treatments and stuff and thinking, seeing parents that were not, like you said, treating their children with the respect that they deserve. I remember thinking, wow, people spend more time researching the next car they're going to buy, looking at all the magazines, which ones are good, which ones are bad, or researching their vacation. They spend hours, where they're going to visit and what tours they want to take. And I'm like, how much time do they actually spend learning on how to raise a child so that child is confident and feels, totally loved and safe and nourished and just feels that they can have full expression. Like, so
Mm,
few people do. So I'm totally with you on that. At least they started putting courses in
yeah.
high school long after I left the system, but on parenting.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's not, again, it's not something in our culture, in our society where they really promote that, right? People try to
Yeah.
just figure it out as they go along, or they either raise their children the way they were raised because they don't know any better, or the opposite, because
Mm,
they don't want to raise their kids the way they were raised. But I just honor all parents that do take the time, and I think more and more people are these days, and it's so important, so
yeah.
important.
And, people are also in denial when their child has a, disability,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't want to believe, when I've mentioned, to some people, like family members, that, have you this, the child been tested for ADHD, or,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, are you kidding me? Like, my child's not that. And it's just like,
Yes.
just calm down,
Yeah.
because you have to reuse your resources. If now we have, school psychology, speech
Mm-hmm.
pathology, and these things available. And it's like, some people don't want to hear the mental health aspect of things. And I'm just glad, like, I didn't know about mental health myself. And I'm just glad that, I do what I do now, because I couldn't honestly now imagine me doing something else, because I feel like this is what I'm called to do. Otherwise, I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
naturally flow. It's not something I prepare for. It's something that exudes out of me. Like, I can have a
Exactly.
conversation with everybody. I didn't ever even talk to you before,
Exactly. Exactly.
So it's
That's the way it
really,
is when you
yeah,
live your purpose and live your truth. You don't have to script it.
yeah.
There's nothing to script. It's just who you are, right?
Mm, yeah. Thank you so much for taking the time to be
Oh,
here today from
I love
Colombia.
this. Yes.
I love it. I love
Yes.
it. Do you have anything else to add before we wrap up?
Well, just to leave with everyone, something that I like to share with people is that no matter how people are showing up in your life, no matter how they're acting or being with you or anyone else, they really are doing the best that they can.
Oh,
Because they if they could do better, they would do better, right? They don't, and even like I said, sometimes it looks like they could do better because we're like, yes, they could. They're not doing their best, but they really are. Because I think if people really had no pain in their heart, they wouldn't be projecting pain onto others because it
mm,
wouldn't be there. right? It's not even possible. So, there's a quote, and I've got to write down, remember the person who said it, but it's very profound.
Mm,
It's 4 simple words: hurt people, hurt people,
yes.
right? So if we can remember that, then it helps us to open our hearts with compassion. So look past the behavior. It doesn't mean you have to love the behavior, but you can love the innocent child on the other side that's
Wow.
hiding, that you can't see that well.
One thing I do want to ask, and thanks for sharing that. I want to remember that more often, um, you know, because I'm still in touch with my parents. So, I mean, yeah. So, um, I want to know, in your program, can you tell us a bit more details about it and,
Sure.
the steps that are in it? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I have a 12-week program, and through private coaching. And if I put a group together, it can be done through group. And what I do is I actually help people uncover some of their core wounds that are stopping them from having boundaries or honoring their boundaries, and stopping them from really living their life fully and authentically. And so we work through that first, and then we look at ways to heal from those wounds and to let them go through reframing and restoring and other processes. And then look at how to create boundaries and how to communicate them with the people in your life in a way that's coming from love, that's coming from your heart, and what to do when your boundaries are challenged. If somebody tries to guilt trip you when you try to state your boundaries, or they try to manipulate you, and like, how do you deal with that? So it's a full process that really helps people through all of that, and I can help them very specifically with their specific situation, because there's private coaching involved, or group, depending on which option people
Wow.
choose. But it's very, very powerful, and you can learn more about that on my website as well.
Yeah.
Program.
It's something that may sound simple, but it's really the key, because the inner work is what exudes onto your personal and
Yes.
professional life.
Yes.
Like, even for myself, I may have, unknown financial, like, paradigms, blocks, and
Hmm.
things. So because I only started my journey last year to now, and it's like the only thing that can keep you going is to take action, and that's how you'll find out, do I
Hmm.
have a block here? Like,
Hmm.
I'm doing the work, but is it something mental? Like, in my subconscious, I need to
Yes.
reframe. You don't just become, for people who have the dream of being, wealthy, millionaire, billionaire, you
Hmm.
don't just become that. You really have to undo stuff
Yeah.
and redo stuff.
Yeah,
It's a
and you
whole
can't see stuff
process.
like, you've often heard that, things that are unconsciously unconscious. I mean, you can't
Mhm.
always draw it out of yourself because you don't even know where to look,
Yeah.
right? And so just like my book has exercises, my
Mhm.
program has little short videos, but there's
Yeah.
action guides.
I
Again,
will
how do
be
you
getting that.
implement, right?
Yeah.
How do you implement what you're
Mm.
learning? Because if you just take in, I mean, there's all kinds of information, right? You can get free information everywhere on the internet and be completely overwhelmed and inundated with it. But
Yes.
if you don't know what to do with it, how do you apply it to your specific situation? How do you
Right.
make it work for you? So to me, again, being a teacher, I have to have those action guides on,
Yeah.
action steps that you can take to move you forward,
Yeah.
right?
And I just want to say I've come this far because I did have, I still do have coaching and mentorship, various
Hmm.
people, someone for this, someone for this. You
Hmm.
don't just become successful and start
No.
and keep advancing. Like, I've had hypnotherapy, I'm Reiki certified, like, I do
Hmm.
journaling, everything I do on a daily basis. I keep studying and reading, like I told you, and speaking to people like you and learning about new things, resources, and connecting with people. All of this makes me outgrow things that aren't me and keeps me moving
Hmm.
forward. But if I stop doing all of this, I would get depressed. I would be in a negative vibration,
Hmm.
and I wouldn't be doing anything productive with my life, you know?
Hmm. And you wouldn't be able to share your beautiful gifts and make
Right.
the amazing impact that you're making,
Yeah,
right?
because if I didn't do all these things and, really stay calm, and just staying calm, I feel like is the main thing. And the boundaries I really feel every day in my life, because, I do have parents who are older. My dad's 74 and I'm 28. So, it's two different worlds.
Hmm. Yeah.
And, and yeah, like, I wouldn't have the mental resolve to interview people and to do this on a daily basis. I really wouldn't. Like, I wouldn't be able
Hmm.
to carry that
Mhm.
energy forth. I
Mhm.
have to like
Mhm.
clear my space so I can hold this space for people and people can hold space for me. But this is like a daily practice. It's a lifestyle. It's not
It
something
is.
that, you just, oh, today I'm just going to interview something. Like, it takes energy. Like,
Sure.
I have to like rest after this. Like,
Sure.
like downtime. Like, I'm not always, sometimes people meet me at events in person. They're like I'm eating alone or something. They're like, wow, like you're a loner, like you're introverted. Like, I'm like, nah. Oh my God, hey guys. Like, it's like, that's not me. I am an introvert, actually, even though I do try together. And Sadhguru, my guru, and I took his inner engineering program, he shared, in a video that the label of introvert, extrovert, to not do that, because some people are just more reserved and others just want to be more vocal. And that is
Mhm.
really the only difference. The same thing with the language again, to not,
Mhm.
because once, like zodiac signs, like once you label someone as this, and then you start coming up with all the reasons why they're this way, or I'm an
Mhm.
introvert,
Mhm.
this is why I do this, or that's why I perceive as that way. It's like, please don't do that, because you're restricting the person to be molded in a way that they're just this way. They're not going to be, they may not be that way tomorrow or a year
Exactly.
from now, but you only
Exactly.
remember them as introvert, Capricorn, Aries personality, like
Yes.
Kiva's favorite color is like, you don't know me anymore. Like,
Yes. And everyone's definition and about all of those words is different,
someone just said they
right?
didn't know I was an introvert.
Yeah, I know. I know. People don't believe I am either. Like, I know
Right?
we talk about not labeling, but for me,
Yeah.
it's not. It's more about energy, introvert,
Energy.
extrovert,
Yeah.
right? It's like you said. I love to be with people.
Yeah.
I mean, I connect. I love this, right?
Yeah.
But I could not do this all day or
No.
every day. Like I would be exhausted. I need that alone time to recharge my batteries and just read or go for a walk, do some gardening.
Yes.
Whereas, some people, if they're extrovert, if they're alone too much, they get depleted of energy. They need to be around people to be
Mm.
re-energized. So, and you have to respect those differences. I could not go partying every weekend. But
No.
again, I used to think, what's wrong with me? Everyone else seems to have no problem. I didn't know about this about myself. So again, that was my go-to place, right? When you grow up thinking everything's wrong with you, then you interpret everything that way, right? But for years, I would think, what is wrong with me? Like everyone else seems to have a great time going to party. I hated parties. Like I just
Me
hated
too.
them. They just felt just too many people and nobody talking about anything
Right?
meaningful. And
They're
I'm
just
like,
on their
I like
phones.
I like the small gatherings, 2, 6 people maybe max, and have some real deep conversations. That would really
Yes.
light me up. But the big parties, I still don't really fully enjoy them. And when I go, I usually pick 1 or 2 people and hang out for the night, so I can
Yeah.
actually have a connection.
So my bachelor's is in interpersonal communication
Oh,
and
wonderful.
organizational skills. It's so interesting because relatives or people asking, so what am I doing with that? Chai together. And what do I do?
Yes.
Like, oh, like earning wise. And it's just chai together is my baby. It's like, as in,
Yeah.
I am doing what I studied. I do it naturally. That's why I
Yes.
studied communication. But I also went to study communication because I wanted to fix my family, because there was no
Yeah.
communication. So that was my reason for why I wanted to study it. I wanted to have communication skills because I did not have any. I would
Yes.
ghost you. Someone would ghost me. I
Yes.
I didn't know how to express myself. I didn't talk to people.
Yes.
I had
Yes.
no friends, believe it. Like, I had no
I
friends.
I can relate.
And it's like, now we're just all different people. But yeah, now I'm actually going to be studying to be a doctor in speech pathology. So
Wow.
I start my journey with that in January, and I'm going to be diagnosing, hopefully with my clinicals, I get to see if I want to work with children or elderly, people who have like
Beautiful.
strokes. And
Yes.
so, but me, it's like I'm diagnosing communication disorders, and it's all the energy here and the chakras
Yes.
and everything. And I just, when I was in Thailand, and then we'll wrap it up.
I know we could talk forever. I
I
feel
know. And people like
it.
this conversation. And Emily said, agreed, this is a brilliant discussion and thought
Oh,
provoking too.
thanks, Emily.
Yeah. Yeah, Emily. And so when I was in Thailand, I had a student, how you have a favorite student, and he has a speech disability. And the education system there, they don't quite understand what I'm telling them, right? Because it's a
Yeah.
rural location. I lived in
Hmm.
Thailand, and the help that they have for speech therapists is in Bangkok, which was 8 hours away from my
Wow.
location. And also money wise, average Thailand citizens cannot afford such
Hmm.
treatments. I don't
Hmm.
know, how that is done there. And I was just letting the family know, I think, he may need, some speech pathologists. And that time, that child inspired me. And I said, I'm going to come back to the States and I'm going to go to medical
Wow.
school for, speech pathology. But I learned that for speech pathology, you don't have to go to medical school. That it in itself is medical school / teaching education courses.
Wow.
But it's not where you go to medical school, like as in to become a doctor.
Right. Right.
But it doesn't mean that it's any less value, because it's just on the level of like a nurse practitioner or like a psychiatric nurse level. It's still a lot of medical terminology and
For
it's hard
sure.
work. So I just find like on that level itself, it's like people tend to only think of doctor or that as like just you're not on the same level, but I am, because that's
For
how I
sure.
carry myself. Like I'm able to do this work that I'm going to do and bless so many people and children with like a voice. And in my letter, I wrote, I said, I want to give people a voice because, why do you want to do this? And I said, simple. I said, my answer is I want to give you a voice because we didn't have one, right? You have
Exactly.
it.
Exactly. So we treasure it. Yeah.
When they ask you for a reason, why do I want to do this? It's like this, and this. But the simple reason is to bless somebody with a voice. That's a miracle in itself.
It is.
People
It's
will
huge.
remember you for that. And I just feel like you would just be so immensely blessed in that when you die, I'll feel like I've impacted thousands of lives. Even on Chai Together, like as I continue to build it, moving forward in my life. But the fact that in both sides of business and my personal career, that I'm changing lives every day. I feel like I live a full life that way.
That's excellent. That's beautiful.
So that's part of me.
It is. You are a gift. We all are. We've just been told we're not, and sometimes takes some of us more years than others to remember.
And relatives would say I'm behind in school. My own family would say like I'm behind. I didn't complete my degree, and now everything has a time. And I wouldn't know that I'm going to be doing my master's and doctorate in speech pathology if I were to start when I was like 20, because I wouldn't have any life experience. I wouldn't have been in Thailand to know this child has inspired me to do this kind of work. Everything is a journey. That's why I say Chai Together, one journey at a time. And journey doesn't mean that you have to rush to success. It means that as long as you're fulfilled, I feel like that's all that matters. So that just came out of me. I didn't plan that.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
But yes, really, thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you for having me. And I look forward to listening to some of your other calls with people too.
Thank you so much. And thanks everyone for tuning in. Ladies, you were amazing. And any gents. So thank you.
I'll look forward to reading the comments later because I didn't see any of them while we were chatting here, but I'll check in with them. So thank you again. Love you all.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.